Okay, here we are, page 297, Duties of the Heart. And it says, remember when the discussion between the soul and the mind. So it says, the mind says, the ruling principle and sum of the matter is that you assume toward He who is above you, in other words, you assume toward God, all those obligations which you want to be assumed toward yourself by one beneath you, given the inequity of the relationship.
Inequality.
Sorry?
Inequality.
What is it?
Inequality. You said inequity.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, where's my mind, right? Given the inequality of the relationship, take what would please you or displease you in the conduct of the one beneath you, and commit yourself to the same code of conduct toward the one above you. So the soul says, carry on and explain. The mind says, think of God's graces toward you, those which you share with others, and those with which you are specially favored. Then imagine that you had bestowed similar favors upon your servant, whom you had acquired. The kind of contact on his part toward you that would please you, accept upon yourself toward your Creator, and what would seem to you to be the improper conduct on his part, you too should regard as improper conduct on your part toward your Creator. So it's interesting. He's saying, the mind is saying to the soul, consider yourself the boss, right? Think of a relationship where you are the boss, and what happens is you do something for the underling. However you want that underling to react is how you should be reacting to what Hashem does to you. That's what the mind is saying to the soul. Okay?
Explain again, just to go back to this whole concept of this, how he's doing here. The soul versus the mind, or the intelligence.
It's not verses. They're having.
It's what?
It's not verses. They're just, the mind is dealing with the soul.
Yeah,
it's a conversation
you're having with yourself. And I'm
right.
to recall how he's dividing this is that. The soul seems like it's the soul. Does the soul want to do the right thing, and the mind is arguing with his
I think they're working in consonance.
Huh?
They're working in consonance.
So that's what he's trying, that you can reason it out with yourself, in other words.
Yeah. So the soul says, I have understood in a general way what you have said to me. Do me a kindness now and explain it to me in detail. So it's not enough just to say, that which you want others to do to you, do unto others. Okay, that's not, he wants it more, because that's a very nice statement, right? That which you want done to you, you should do to others. A very nice statement, but how do you do that in practical terms? Okay? So the mind says, the proper way for a servant in this world to act toward his master, who bestowed upon him even a small portion of the bounties your Creator has bestowed upon you, includes serving him exclusively, in word and in deed, faithfulness to him and dedication to his affairs, both outwardly and inwardly, and awe and fear of him, so long as he is in his service. In other words, when you're working for somebody, if you're the servant, and he has bestowed kindness upon you, so you owe him your life. Okay? As one of the pious one puts it, do not rebel against your master while he is looking at you. Also, the servant should be lowly and humble before his master in his external actions and in the privacy of his conscience. By the way, this is important to say, because what happens, when we're in public, we act one way, and when we're in private, we act the other way. And that's exhibited by every good teacher or parent who will say, use your indoor voice, honey. Right? When you say use your indoor voice, it's already saying that when I'm in public, I can act like a ruffian. I can yell and scream and do what I want. But when I'm indoors, I have to act like a mensch. Instead of always act like a mensch. I am a mensch, mister. You can't do anything. Your inside should be like the outside. That's what he's saying. So the same way to my boss or to my employer, I may say, oh, you're a great guy. Behind his back, or behind her back, if it's a female employer, however, it would be without using prejudice. So what happens? I denigrate them. Or if somebody says, how's it working for blank? Oh, well, It's all right. You just killed a reputation, just like that. It's all right. You know, it means instead of saying, "Oh, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Unbelievable. The guy treats me so well. You know, bonuses every other week, and so on and so forth." So he should bear himself with humility before him in his dress and in his mode of conduct. He should honor him, exalt him with his tongue and in his heart. Praise and thank him by day and by night. Recall his beneficence in private and in public. Recount his glory and praise as befits him. Run to do his service with joy and good intentions, out of love for him, to find favor before him, to draw it near to his will. Unlike when we tell our kids, please clean up the room. What? That's when we suddenly get the whats. Or, can I do this first? Do I have the right tone? Right? Huh? Why do I have to do this? Ma! Now, all those things that we like to come up with. And we as workers, again, many times will do that too. We won't say it to our employer because we don't want to be fired. But our employer will tell us to do something. We'll say, no problem. Consider it done. And then 2 days later, did you do it? No, I'm getting to it. I'm going to get to it. The owner, sooner or later, will figure out you don't want to do it, but okay.
You say to yourself, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard.
Right. Which is why you don't do it, because, yeah. Or it's when your wife says to you, honey, take out the garbage. Got it covered, hon. No problem. Can you do it now? No. Just let me finish what I'm doing. We grow up that way. Okay. Right, that's all it is. So he should always plead with his master to accept him and forgive him. He should love him, fear that he falls short in what he commanded him. He does command keep far from what he has forbidden him, and bear in mind his previous sins. His master's favors should appear manifold to him, and he should appreciate their magnitude. He should deprecate the value of his own deeds in light of what he owes him. Now, this also is very hard. Okay? I want to think about this as an employee. If you can put your cap on, you have a cap, so. Okay? As a cap of an employee or in a classroom, I did my best. What should I expect from my teacher? I should expect an A. Right? If I do the best in class, I should expect an A. It doesn't matter that I flunked. I did my best. So, or when I'm working, I should expect from my boss, thank you. At least a thank you, if nothing else. And I think, by the way, at the end of that day, I deserve what I'm getting. I deserve more than I'm getting. Never mind, I deserve what I'm getting. I deserve more. If my boss would only realize what I've done for him. I have to admit, the him is part of my upbringing, but it's him or her. If I did the best, and if they would just know how much I did, they would give me a pay raise just like that. Yeah. But they don't appreciate me, and that's how we end up. They don't appreciate me, and therefore I'm not going to work as hard. Right? That's what we usually end up doing. So now when it comes to Hashem, I really want you to think about this. When it comes to Hashem, we have to thank God for every single breath we take. Never mind the steps we take. The breath that we take. That's what he's trying to get across. Every single little thing. And yet, what we do is we say, well, you owe me, God. I did what I was supposed to do.
Instead of saying, I could have done more, I could have done better.
Right. Instead of saying to ourselves, I have so much more to go. But we're saying to God, hey, we have an equal relationship here, don't we? I put my tefillin on, I came to Minyan, I did my Shabbos candles, I went to mikvah, I did this, I did that. I can list it down, God. What have you done for me lately? And we treat God, by the way, we also treat our parents and our bosses in the same sort of manner, like equals. And there's no equality there. And that's what he's saying. So that he should belittle his own efforts compared with what he should have done, admit his own insignificance in relationship to the greatness of his master, and bow to him, frequently bowing down to him in submission and humility. Again, this is the days he used to bow down. But this would be accepting what he says, even though you consider it crazy. What a crazy way to run a business. Again, we all think that. A principal does something crazy, and Bill will tell you. He said, Michigan. I don't know if you use the word Michigan, but it's similar.
I should have.
Right. But nonetheless, we think, crazy guy. But we have to assume, if we're working, that that's the CEO. The CEO says it must have some sort of plan. Now, by the way, the other thing I have to say is, if the person earned the respect, it's not a matter of somebody just walks in. There's many examples where people walk into a job as the manager. They don't even know what's going on in the industry, but they become a manager because they knew somebody. So now they come in and they're trying to tell you what to do, and now you're looking at them and saying, "Oh God, you're not one of these people again." And you can't say anything, but you know they really don't know what they're talking about, and you know if you do it, you'll get fired. So it's because the big boss will say, "Why'd you do that? This guy was just nepotism." Are you crazy? You can't allow that to happen. So he would yell at you for getting it done. I mean, I've worked with managers who really didn't know the industry at all. And I went to the boss and said, do I listen to him or do I ignore him? He said, use your brain. And that was it. So that meant ignore him, but he couldn't say that without hurting his manager. So, okay. But that's what I'm saying. So the guy has to trust his master. And in this case, we have to trust Hashem, that Hashem is doing what is good for us. Okay? But again, if it's somebody who doesn't have that experience, then he wouldn't apply this logic to him. So he should put his trust in him for all his needs and accept any condition his master brings upon him. If his master provides for him fully, he should offer thanks and praise. If he leaves him hungry, he should accept his condition patiently. That's also very difficult. Again, when things are happening good for us, we have no problem. But when things are going bad, suddenly we start saying, what's going on, right? Nobody wants the bad stuff. He should not suspect the fairness of his judgment, nor attribute to him injustice in his decree. He should be content with what the master favors him and justify the master when he disciplines him. That's also difficult to do, right? Your boss is disciplining you, the teacher is disciplining you, your parents discipline you, and what do? We immediately want to blame them and say if they would only have read the book, you know.
If you think you did something good and they say something to the other effect that you need to improve this or something,
right.
You have to take that.
Right, you have to take that. Or if they don't, right, if you don't get what you're expecting, you shouldn't suspect the fairness of that judgment. That's what we were reading, we learned last night. When the worker was working for his guy, and 3 years after working, he was supposed to get paid, and then he comes to collect the paycheck, and the guy says, "I have no money." Okay, give me this. I have that. I don't have that. I don't have the land. I don't have food. I don't have this. And the guy walks away dejected. He doesn't argue with him. He just says, "You don't have. You don't have." Then he finally comes to him, I think, whatever it was, a month later, and says, with everything. And he says, so tell me, what do you think when I said I have no money? He gave him all the sides of merit afterwards. The guy said, you were right in every single side of merit, and here's everything I owe you, plus more. Okay? So, there's a fairness here. You can't, when something happens wrong, you need to not judge that person wrong, or not judge God wrong. That's why when people ask, how could the Holocaust happen? They're automatically saying that God made a mistake. They're not asking, because how am I supposed to answer that question? How can anybody answer that question? Chelyabinsk massacres, any one of the disasters we've gone through. There's no answer. I can always say, we sinned and everything else. I mean, that's the easy answer. But the bottom line is you're asking on God. And when you ask on God, God has his judgment. You have to assume that judgment is correct. Furthermore, it is proper on his part that in every movement of his limbs and in all his qualities, he manifests the signs of his service and his master's ownership over him. He should speak only of his master, pay exclusive attention to his master's ways. By the way, if you think about this, this is you should speak of them when you're living in your house, when you're walking in your way. So he's really just going to Shema at this point. Listen only to his master, eat only what he provides for him. Think only of his greatness, rejoice only upon finding favor with him. Be happy only in his service. Seek only to do his will, hasten only at his bidding, desist only from rebelling against his master's will, stay nowhere except in his master's house, and stand firm only in his faith, read only his book. Again, read the Torah. This is where you read the Torah, don't read the other books. If you listen to anybody online, every once in a while they say, and the Quran says, and then they say, but I'm not telling you to read the Quran. Well, in the Christian scriptures it says, but I'm not telling you to read the Christian scriptures. I'm telling you what it says, don't have to waste your time. Okay? And I actually doubt that they actually read it too. They probably got it from other tapes that went on and said it. I really doubt that they read it. Or they read the books that tell us why we shouldn't believe in them. But it's just amazing that people would go one way or the other. Okay, we're only the cloak of his reverence. Sleep only in a bed of love for him. Imagine only his likeness. Wake only with the sweetness of his memory. Find pleasure only in his company. Flee only from rebelling against him. Grieve only when he is angered. Fear only his reproof. Wish only for his grace. Be angry only with what his master's will obliges him to be so. Be pleased only with what his master's will, with one who does his master's will. Take only with his permission and give only to one to whom the master has commanded to give. So it is with every motion that he makes. He should not move a leg or raise an eyelid except to fulfill the will of his master. On the other hand, the improper way for a servant to act are the opposites of those that are good in his master's sight. When the ways of proper conduct are reversed, they are easily recognized. I have prepared and assembled here for you a sufficient number of examples to indicate to you the rest of the duties and their opposites. Since the ways in which a servant in this world finds favors with his master are as we have described, and you know how insignificant is the kindnesses of the masters to their servants, how much then will you owe God, much more than we have mentioned, when you come to repay him with all his kindnesses toward you. So that's really what he set up. He said, here you have a master, a humanly master, and if you really want to serve the humanly master, you have to really put your whole heart and soul into it. And you can't just be, I'm doing it for the paycheck sort of thing. You have to really put it in. And if you have to do it for that person, kol v'chomer, all the more so, Hashem. Okay, that's where he's really going with that. So now a person's obligation of service corresponds to the degree of favor bestowed upon him. The soul, it says, I have understood what you have said, and your explanation is sufficient. Now explain to me the various ways in which I am under an obligation of increased service to Hashem. May he be exalted. So it wasn't good enough for what he heard. Now he has to hear more. So the mind says people come under an obligation of increased service according to the favor, general and particular, bestowed upon them. So favors bestowed on human beings in four ways. The first is the goodness of the Creator, which embraces all of mankind. He brought them into existence, which previously they did not exist. He gave them life, and he favors them with all that we have spoken of in the second gate of this book. They are accordingly under a universal obligation of service to the Creator. May he be exalted. This consists of obedience to all the commandments called for by the intellect, which were observed by Adam, Chanoch, Noach, and his sons, and Eov and his friends, up to the days of Moshe, our master, peace be upon him. In other words, that's the 7 Noahide commandments. The world is obligated to that just based upon our existence. Okay? Whoever adheres to all of these for the sake of Hashem's service, Hashem will bestow upon him favors beyond those enjoyed by other people, and will raise him to a higher level in this world and give him a great reward in the world to come. As I said, as with Abraham, to whom Hashem said, do not fear Avram, I am a shield to you, your reward will be very great. So again, here the Rav Bachya is slipping in this concept of, even for the Ben Noach, I have to do it l'shem shamayim. I have to do it for the sake of God. In other words, I didn't murder. So to quote all the atheists out there, what's his name? The magician. Ken? Yeah, the Penn. It's Penn, right? I know his first name is Penn and Teller, from Penn and Teller, Penn. He said, they always say that religion gives ethics. Well, I don't need God to tell me I can't murder. I don't need God to tell me I can't steal. I don't need a God to tell me that. I'm a good person. I'm not going to do it. The answer is you don't need it. You're right. 100% you don't need it. But you don't get rewarded for it either if you're doing it just because you think it's right. Because when you think it's wrong, you'll murder. Thus you have Hitler. Thus you have Mussolini. Thus you have all these other guys, Ahmadinejad, and so on and so forth. All these people who believed 100% that what they were doing was right. Okay? So, but the people who adhere to the commandments, the 7 Noahide commandments, the common sense commandments, because God said so, that's what he's saying, then Hashem will bestow you with all these favors. So apparently, even according to Rav Bachya, at least, in this paragraph, it seems to be saying that he holds that even a non-Jew has to do it l'shem shamayim.
Yeah.
Okay?
Isn't it one of the 7 commandments that you have to recognize that there is a God?
You have to recognize there's a God, but it doesn't mean that what I do has to be l'shem shamayim. I have to recognize God. Fine, there's a God who creates the world. But why don't I murder? Because I know it's wrong. No, not because you know it's wrong, because God said so. And that's a very strong, that's a hard hurdle to go with. In other words, again, we know a lot of things are wrong. We know that stealing is wrong, but how many people will use somebody else's telephone without their permission? Or anything, to pick up a pencil. Or, whatever it's going to be. We're stealing time.
You're making the assumption that they would say it's okay to do that.
Making an assumption, but it's not clear that they would. I'll give you an example. Let's say that somebody asked you to sell something for them, okay? So, and you agreed. I'll sell it to you. I'll sell it and we'll blah, blah, blah. And you made an accounting mistake and their error, and you realize that they owed you money. Now you sell this product, another product that they had, which was for about a little less than the money they gave you. And you say, instead of telling them that I sold their item, what I'll do is I'll just put it back in my pocket. It's already sold. They owe me money anyway. They're trusting me. So we'll just call it even. Well, is that stealing or not? Why is it stealing? You have to tell them. It's their choice. They may want to owe you. I don't know.
Remember a couple of years ago we had a lunch and learn on that. All the things that you don't think are stealing that are.
Right. So I'm saying all these things you have to...
Stealing somebody's internet as you
Correct.
go by their house.
Correct. Yeah, how many times people want, because it depends on if you have a lock on the internet.
Yeah.
So if I don't know if it's an open internet, like for me, I don't know what open internet means, but apparently you can you have to put a code in.
AT&T, so
Right.
carriers AT&T, and they provide that.
Right. So now if you would come by the Torah Center and we had open access, and because we didn't know to lock it, so now you're sitting outside and doing your work, you're ripping us off.
Yeah.
You're slowing me down. What are you doing?
Somebody's telephone without permission.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that people will do and think, they won't mind, or they won't know. They'll never find out. You've just stolen.
Or even more, as you're walking by your next door neighbor. He won't mind if I use his lawnmower because he left it out.
Right. Oh, I just need the rake for a second, and then and you didn't break it. It's not like you broke it. You put it. You break right. Yeah. No, you break. You put it down right where it was. Right.
This is a very interesting concept that we don't usually think of in a hierarchy. We think of our position and we think of those below us and above us, but we don't connect the end of the hierarchy as God.
Correct.
And
that's what he's trying.
Noahide commandments, and that for everyone, no matter where you fit on this hierarchy.
Correct.
You're all obligated up.
Correct. And
God.
again, and you have to recognize that.
But you look below. We usually think of the people below us on the hierarchy and what they should be doing for us and they should act toward. That's a really interesting concept, that you transfer that to your relationship with God, so you're moving up and down at the same time.
Yeah.
The for like doing something without asking or for a rake or a mower or something like that. If there's an unwritten rule.
What's the unwritten rule?
Because I remember my father telling me about when he grew up in the country. People took other people if that person wasn't around, they would take the truck to town and bring it back with more gas. They wouldn't. They bring it back with they top it off.
Right.
If it was half full, if they took it half full, they bring it back full.
The point was everybody knew each other. So, hey, Mrs. Whoever, I took the car to town. I fill up the gas. The people left their doors open.
You need eggs coming to eggs.
Okay, so the way again, if I would say like this, if it's an unspoken agreement, then it's not stealing.
Right.
But you can't assume that,
Right.
and you have to know that.
Right.
Okay, so if it's a matter of the keys are, I knew people like this in Maine. They left. Anybody who knew them knew where the keys were. They never locked the door anyway, but they knew if the door was locked where the key was, and they would give them permission, as it were, to go in.
Sure.
But if you weren't part of their group and you just saw people walking in and out and taking food, it doesn't mean you have the right to do that. So
somebody told you about it, but you had not explicitly come to the agreement with that owner.
correct. So that's what I would say. If it's understood, then you don't need to go through that. But even there, by the way, you have to be very, very careful, because what I may allow at this moment, I may change my mind now, and I have the right as the owner to do that. If I suddenly decide to lock my gate up, my pool, then and you decide, he must have made a mistake. He forgot. He jumped my fence. What are you doing?
Or you climb over the fence.
I locked it.
You accidentally locked the gate.
Right. I locked it. What are you doing? You have no right to. And then I don't care what you're doing, but you have no right. So again, there has to be a really clear, explicit, unwritten law, if you will.
Right.
And otherwise you could be guilty. So you don't want to run into that. So whoever rebels against God, despite his favors, will fall from the degree of rational beings and their virtues to the low level of irrational creature. There's also an interesting thing, okay? Because here a non-religious person is going to say, "You call me an irrational creature?" What does this mean, though? You go by emotions, not logic.
I was thinking you would go on the level of an animal. An animal does what it wants to do at any given time.
Right. So you're going emotionally. It's your everything is emotions, or everything is nothing. There is no bottom line.
No thought about it. It's just,
right. I'm doing, like you said, I'm going to do what I want to because I want to, as compared to if I recognize there's a God, so then I have to follow the rules. There's rules here I have to follow.
and animals have no such
Right.
capability.
I'll take your. I don't know if that's true. I think there's rules for the animal kingdom that they have to follow, but it's but whatever.
Your dog or your cat, it goes when it wants to.
Right.
Go.
That's 100% right.
Doesn't care where it is.
That's right. So in this world, he will share the fate of the beasts, as is written. God's enemies will be consumed like the glory of the pastures. They will be consumed in smoke. And that's from Tehillim. And it says in Yeshaya, so in the next world he will suffer the most possible evil, as is written, and to your spirit fire will consume you. The second way, that was the first one. The second way, the Creator's favor bestowed on one people among the peoples, one nation among the nations, as he favored the children of Israel when he took them out of Egypt and brought them to the land of Canaan. Correspondingly, he required of them additional service beyond the first level of service, namely adherence to the commandments that have their origin in revelation alone, after first warning them and exhorting them in regard to the commandments called for by the intellect. In other words, the first 7 commandments, like I said, it's logical. You don't really need somebody to tell you shouldn't murder and steal, but the laws were set up. And now when Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, so now he required, okay, I'm going to up the ante. Now I want you to follow things that are only based upon revelation. You can't wear wool and linen together. You can only eat kosher, so on and so forth.
Oh, prior to that was more of a logical.
Yeah, it is logical. Again, I shouldn't. I can't steal. I can't do certain things. It's logical. The one that's not logical, I guess, would be that you cannot eat a limb from a live animal. Even minachai. That it may be logical because of it's just cruelty, but
I can tear a limb from a living animal. That's all.
Right. But it's but still, that one and the belief in God would be all the belief in God is also rational, because you came from something.
Oh, that's how the book starts.
Right, you came from something. Nothing just pops into being. So if that's the case, you can believe there's a God. But again, Avraham Menachai would be the most non-rational there. In other words, why is it there? Because I shouldn't have cruelty, or it's cruelty to the animal. Whatever the case is going to be, we could argue that out continually, which would be the real reason. But every other one, don't commit adultery, don't do this, don't do that, is all logical. Don't steal. That's all part of don't stealing. So whoever assumed this service for the glory of God, God singled him out for special favor and held him under an obligation of service beyond that of his nation or the rest of his tribe. We find, for example, in the case of the tribe of Levi, that when Moshe said, "Whoever is for God, come to me," and all the Levium gathered themselves to him, as it says in the book of Shemot, God lavished favor upon them and chose them among Aaron and his sons to minister to his glory, charged them with the special precepts in addition to those given to the rest of the nation, and promised them great reward in the world to come. So the more we go to God, the more he shows us favor. But whoever of them rebels against the Creator, may he be exalted, will fall from both levels and will be punished in both worlds. As the wise man Shlomo said, it will not be well with the wicked, nor will he prolong his days. That's okay. Now the third way.
When you punished in both worlds, doesn't always happen though, or does it happen in ways that we don't perceive? I mean, the classic question about why do the wicked thrive?
Why bad things happen to good people, right? It's when bad things happen. That's the name of the book. But but you could ask that. Well, that's the other way, by the way. Your fellow's asking differently. Why do bad people prosper?
He says that we punished in both worlds.
Yeah, so
that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, it's yes and no. I mean, the person who is. We can all give the second world, right? We'll all agree on the second world. It's only this world we're going to argue. So in this world, you could say one of two things. And the Gemara says it, that if somebody is prospering in this world, so that means that he did something good that God has to pay him for. Something good that God has to pay him for.
And it could be some little thing.
Some little thing. And so God, in order not to be called a cheater, pays him in this world and can totally punish him in the next. So that's one. If he is a total Rasha, then he'll be punished in both worlds.
He's going to get it one way or the other.
Then he'll be punished in both worlds. So
before he dies, he's going to get something, or he may die very.
Well, how is he going to die? Okay. I wouldn't want to be on that receiving end. But I don't think anybody would. But again, they could be talking about a person like that who is a Rasha, and this is one who rebels. Remember, it's different. See, we have to understand something. You have different levels of saying I'm ignoring God. The first level of ignoring God is just I'm a mumul te'avon. I'm doing out of lust. In other words, I understand there's a God. I know there's God. I'm not fighting God, but I want my hamburger. And if I can't get my kosher hamburger, I'll take the non-kosher hamburger. So, because I just want my burger, I want to satisfy my desires. That's a mumla te'avon. That's an apostate by taste. Okay, so I like Shabbos, but let's face it, I want to play golf, I want to be on my boat, I want whatever the example would be, and so I'm just going to do that. But I admit this to God, and so if I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Again, mumla te'avon. There's the desire to sin is just stronger than the other desire. That's a mumla te'avon. Then you have the mumla hachis. That's the rebellious guy. The rebellious guy has a choice between kosher and between treif. He takes a treif every time. He has a choice between observance and non-observance. He always takes non-observance because he's going like this to God. That's it. I don't hold by you. Leave me. I like that. They actually talk. I don't hold by you. I think you're wrong here. Okay, but and if you are here, you know what? Go ahead, do something to me. What? Hit me with your best shot. You have no power. Tough luck. I'm going to do what I want. They're usually angry at something, usually angry at God because something happened in their background, whatever the case is going to be. That's the mumla hachis. That person, that mumla hachis, is who we're talking about. That guy remember, in all these cases, they had to first recognize and understand what God was. Otherwise, you have what we call a tinik shenishba, a child who was kidnapped by birth. And was never brought up the proper way, never grew up in a Torah home, and had a strong Jewish upbringing, and so on and so forth. That person, you can't blame at all. It's like a little baby who was kidnapped and brought, like the kids who from the Holocaust who were thrown into the with the nuns, and they were brought up as non-Jews, and they went to the highest levels of the church because they became priests and everything else. Yeah. Father Lustiger. It's a Jewish kid. Yeah. Father Lustiger. And even when they told him he's Jewish, yeah, very nice and Jewish. Okay, leave me alone. I believe in Jesus, blah, blah, blah. Okay. He was brought up that way. You can't say that he is doing lahachis. He's not doing it on purpose. He was brought up that way. Every conservative reform, reconstructionist Jew is brought up believing that how their rabbi said it is true. They're wrong. But they can't be punished for that. It's an impossibility. Not at the level we can be punished. In other words, I drive, they drive. Okay, I don't really drive for those listening. Okay. But if I do something wrong and they do something, same sin, Hashem's going to look at me and say, what are you doing? Them, I understand. They weren't taught right. You? Are you crazy? I have to punish you harder. Okay, because you should have known better. And that's how we look. And by the way, think about this. You have your older kid, you have your younger kid. Who gets punished more for the same act? Well, older one, always. Should have known better. Should have known better. The younger kid does the same thing. Why did you punish him? Well, he's a little baby. What are you talking about? You know better. Mind you, it's only 20 minutes between you. But whatever it's going to be. But nonetheless, we look at that. So if somebody's really put on that higher level, then you have to reach that higher level. So really, that's what you're dealing with here. So when it comes to this, where he's saying you rebelled, you marad against the system, you really went against them. So we're talking about a person who knew and never should have done that, as compared to the person who really doesn't know. Yeah.
I was going to say, on the back of these books, there should be a warning label that you can't claim you don't know these things. that we're expected to act on a higher level.
Correct.
From studying this.
Correct.
Most people don't have access to this material.
They can't claim that anymore. Well, again, they don't want to seek it out.
But if they didn't come from a family, they didn't have questions about morality.
Right. Well, I think more, and I'm going to talk from my background. I think that when you grow up in the non-Orthodox world, that the teachers, even if they mention these terms, which they don't, but even if they did, you wouldn't see them as anything realistic, because we weren't taught that sort of first of all, we didn't see the observance level. The only one who was observant in the entire congregation would have been the rabbi and some other freaks. But for the most part, the rabbi. But nobody else is keeping Sabbath. Nobody else is keeping kosher. Nobody else is doing anything. Once in a while, somebody puts up a sukkah. But even that, I mean, I grew up, and so we had, I think, 200 family units in my synagogue. The only sukkah I ever saw was at the shul.
Yeah.
I never saw it anywhere else. Some guy living down the street from me claimed, I never saw it, claimed that he put up in every year. The only reason he told me was because when I became religious, I put it in my front of the house. There was no way that you could miss it. I attached it to my house. It was a ramshackle shack. And everybody said, "What's going on here?" The Nebels are going crazy. but I attached it, and by the way, nobody ever gave me the restraint, what do they call it, the building order. I never received that because they all knew that in 8 days they're coming down anyway. So, but it was strange that in all this time you could walk around the neighborhood and you wouldn't see anything. Here, you walk around the neighborhood, you see it everywhere. Thank God. We have sukkahs all over the place. Everybody's going back and forth. Somebody asked me, why should they move here? I said, well, are you kidding? On Shabbos, it looks like Borough Park here. All the Jews are walking back and forth. It's the most amazing thing in a small town like this to have that. But hey, thank God. But again, there's no way that the kids wouldn't know what a sukkah, lulav, etrog, Pesach, everything. It's a constant life. If I grew up in a non-religious home, though, some people do not even know what Passover is all about. Right. Some people do not separate. In other words, I grew up with a kosher home on Pesach. We had to make the whole house kosher Pesach. The rest of the year we weren't. But that one time, separate dishes, blah, blah, blah. Most of the kids I grew up with, they looked at me and they said, what kind of nonsense is that? What are you crazy? And I would take off for Jewish holidays. I would be the only one. My family would be the only one taking off for Jewish holidays. The rest of them were going to class. So I would give the teacher my note every time. We will not be in school these days. And every first semester I got the same stupid comment, excessive absences.
Yeah.
You can't do anything. I mean, you couldn't train these people. But they're all excused absences, very nice, but it was just crazy. But, but that's what you grow up with. So here I was a religious fanatic in my conservative shul. Not that we were keeping anything per se, but it was more religious than they were. And so, the rabbi always liked to sing us on Shabbos, but he didn't, with all due respect to him, if he listens to my tapes, he really didn't encourage it. He thought he did. I'm sure he thought he did. But in reality, he didn't. Okay? Not the way he should have. If he sees somebody doing that, he really should have taken us under his wing. He took my brother under his wing, but he should have taken us all under his wing, because we were the only family that was doing anything like that. But okay, I'm still religious as an indirect result of what he didn't do. So the third way, God's favors upon a family among the family of the nation, such as Kohanim, Levium, and the royal seat of the house of David. Correspondingly, he required of them increased service. The duties of the Kohanim and the Levium are known and clearly set forth in the book of God's law. So it says, the duties of the house of David are as is written, house of David, this is what God had said, execute justice in the mornings and deliver the robbed from the hand of the oppressors. So we'll have I'm going to go down to the fourth way. Whoever completely fulfills these duties out of love for God's will, God will single him out for special favor in this world and with great reward in the next. He will be a distinguished nobleman or a teacher of righteousness. By the way, that's the reward. A teacher of righteousness, some teacher. We wouldn't consider that a reward today, but okay, fine. As Scripture says of Pinchas, then Pinchas stood up and did justice, and the plague was arrested. This was counted to him as a merit from generation to generation forever. But the priests of the family of Levi, the descendants of Tzadok, who kept the service of my sanctuary when the children of Israel went astray from me, they approached me to attend me. But whoever rebels against God in these matters will fall from all high levels in this world and will be subject to great suffering in the next. as you know from the account of Korach and his company. So there you see already, he's backing off a little from what he said. If you see that, whoever rebels against God in these matters will fall from their high levels and will be subject to great suffering in the next world, not necessarily this.
Okay.
So he's already covering that base too. Okay, we'll have to stop here.
28.